Hello. Oh, man. What a week. So, we'll do the usual where I babble about random stuff before we get into the topic. So, uh, for those who were here last week, you know that I had a big, like, loop interview that I went through where I interviewed with multiple people. Not quite as extreme as the interview that I did for Amazon when I was going through their process to get hired. So, in a really short period of time, I got back feedback and then got scheduled for the final interview, which was yesterday. So, I had two more interviews yesterday, um, and I think those went pretty well. One went the second of the two interviews, which is with the like overall QA manager. So I think the hiring manager's boss. So we would call that a skip, usually in tech, right? Which is like you skip your leadership level, right? Anyway, um, we went like 20 minutes over time, mostly just talking. So usually that's a good sign. Usually that's good. So hopefully I'll have some like really sweet news relatively soon and be back to the land of the scheduled employment. And normal routine. I'm one of those people who really does well off of routine. So if I get out of routine, things go haywire. Um, yeah. Other than that, let me see. Is there anything else I need to talk about? I don't really think so. I can answer this question really fast in chat though. From Leo, what do you recommend for a pre-filter for a 407? Should I just get one of those 3D printed Etsy intake strainers? I've had on not the 407 specifically, but on I think it was a 406 and a 305. I've just used like the medium intake sponge and just made it fit. But I think if you get one of those like designed 3D printed ones, you might have something that just you don't have to maintain quite as often, or maybe the maintenance will be a little less of a pain. One of the problems I ran into with those coarse intake sponges is because of the strainer that sits on the intake of the Fluval canisters, right? It would get like really sucked into those things and be kind of a pain to actually get off. But yeah, there's a lot of options. I mean, like Rye Guy is mentioning, there's like the Marine Land pre-filter also that you can make fit the tubing. There's lots of options, but if you want something that's just like literally designed to fit it by a 3D print person out there on Etsy, I would go that route. There's a lot of options out there. It's all about what you're trying to pull off. You know, if you really want that intake sponge, might just be simpler when it comes to your maintenance to get something that sockets in really cleanly. My thought. All right, let's talk about the Greater Portland Aquarium Society and their auction. So the auction Saturday, there's kind of like a minor meeting beforehand. It was mostly just announcements. Um, I walked in. I hit a bunch of traffic, and I I ended up a little later than I wanted to be. So I got there I think at like 12:25, 12:30, something like that. And most of the stuff was starting to kick off at noon. It sounds like they weren't too far in, but I basically walked in while they were talking. So there was a kind of a big uh, impromptu hello that occurred, which was a little embarrassing, but kind of funny at the same time. The folks that run the Portland Club are very, very kind to me, and I like a lot of them. They're wonderful people. So so after we went through kind of the meeting stuff, the auction kicked off, and there were a couple really cool things in the auction that they had. I think they worked with the Wet Spot in order to get these things ordered specifically for the club auction, and they only paid, you know, whatever the cost is at Wet Spot, which is nice. So one of the things they had is the giant Stardust Anubias, which is really cool. Let me see if I can give you guys a picture really fast. Yeah, we can, like, maybe... Oh, this one on Boost Plant sucks. Because it's not submerged. Boo. Boo. Trying to see if I can give you guys an image. I actually was running a lot of errands and getting a lot of stuff done today, so I didn't have as much prep time as I would have liked. I'll just describe it. So, you know your standard Anubias, right? In the giant Stardust is a larger leaf, so not as small as like the Pintos and stuff, where they're a Nana variety, the Nana Petite variety. They're a little bit larger, somewhere kind of halfway between Nana Petite and like the mini, or the, not the mini coin, but like the round leaf or the gold coin, where the leaves are about like yay big, you know? It's kind of like halfway between that and Petite, so a little bit larger. And what happens is the vein is bright white, and there's kind of a white, almost aura around the vein, if you will. And then you get little speckles of white on the rest of the leaf, depending on if you can keep it in that condition, which is not easy. Really not easy. Most of those white Anubiases really require really high amounts of light to stay white, and typically CO2 at a pretty good kick. They're really finicky, and when they start going green, they usually don't come back to white. I have had one come back before that I got from a friend. It was like, hey, here's a marble white, but it went all green on me. I don't know if you can recover it. Good luck. But it was only like 2 or 3 leaves, and then it went back to green, and it was like, nah, no more. I was like, nah, all right. But to be fair, I wasn't pushing really high CO2 levels, so maybe it would have been recoverable. So that was like the big ticket item, which it was at like $50 something was its estimated retail. And I think it went for like 40 or so. It didn't go for, it went less than retail, but for me, it was like, I don't know that I have a place I want to put a white Anubias that is the right setup. Because, like, Fallen Forest, you would think initially would be the good tank for that, but I'm not pushing really high CO2 in that tank because it's full of rainbows, right? Which, spoiler alert, there's a video coming for that tank relatively soon, now that the final inhabitants are there, other than I do have some of the ones that are in this tank still that I need to transfer. But that was good. And then there were a lot of good plants, lots of really like low-tech friendly plants too, which is kind of nice. I think it's good to have those things. Lots of Anubias in general. Several things went kind of cheap, and for those things it was like there was somebody who had a brand new 100-gallon tank that they were trying to get all their plants for, and maybe some fish. So, you know, this one person was really buying a lot of stuff, which was awesome to see. And I spent a lot of time, honestly, just talking with some of my friends. So I was talking to Danny and Kenny from Danikin Aquatics. Caitlin DeRozier was there. I was talking to Caitlin. One of the biggest problems I would say they have, and this is the thing that I would suggest to them in the future to fix, is they were choosing not to use an audio system. So because there was lots of like small side conversations, I noticed, and not just me missing stuff, but other people going, wait, what was that? Because it's just normal voice volumes. And when you've got little groups of people who are sitting together and talking and socializing, and you're just trying to project your voice, the auctioneers, you're not going to override all of that efficiently. So there's some potential that some of the items went cheaper than they probably should have because a lot of people just missed things. Yeah, Caitlin's mentioning the one person who had a new tank. She easily spent a couple $100. But she was getting great deals for the most part. I would say several things were great deals. Toward the end of the auction, there was these really good group of bettas, and there's a local club member down there in the Portland area who breeds bettas in like 12-foot ponds. He does mostly like half moon and placots, so short fin, but a lot of your like the Nemo or the very lots of color, right? Very high levels of color in the bettas. And he had some that were like really high levels of yellow, and another one that's supposed to be like pink and purple. Apparently, it's a strain that he's been working on or something. Those probably all went cheaper than like you would have ever bought them in a store, because I think most of them are going like $12 to $15, except for the pink purple one went for like I think 25 or so. And I almost bought one. I almost bought one of the bettas just because I could see how much yellow and blue was on the fish, basically at an angle at the farthest distance from the person holding up the bag. And when you can see that much color at a fish that's stressed out, like, you know the color is really good. And I got really tempted to get one, but my better judgment said, you know, we've got many drives and much drive time to do, because I'm driving electric, right? So I've got to charge, and I was making a couple of stops on the way home. So I was kind of like, even though I'm prepared, I still don't want to risk a betta with that long a drive and all that. Like, maybe I'll just talk to this guy later and potentially pick up a betta some other time. There was a projector. I see Nabokov fan asked about that. There was a projector, but it was just on a rotation of some of the items that they had brought in, rather than having a picture for every specific item that was coming up. I think if there was enough time to like preset all those things, or you got pictures from people, that would be really amazing. But it's really hard for club auctions to do that, because it's a lot of overhead and work, and then you have to auction things off in really specific orders, or have some kind of you'd have to have some kind of like database that pulls it based on auction number, and then you have to have everything wired up really, really well, and that's not easy. You know, the tech in use is not, I don't think they have a dedicated developer. They've been getting some help from like Danny at Danikin, but yeah. Paul, I don't have an inside voice. Some people are really good, but the particular members of the club who are, they're super nice guys, and they weren't like quiet. It's not like they were mumbling, but just with enough conversations in a relatively large room, because this is at a moose lodge. Your voice is gonna get lost, right? Unless you're like very, very loud. So as an example, there was a plant that came up, and they really didn't know like anything about it, which is Stargine Bihar, or Bahar, depending on how you want to pronounce it, which is in the Stargine family, but it grows very tall, like a stem. And then the leaves have a shape similar to like, why am I forgetting this plant? It's super popular. And it's technically a Ludwigia. Oh, my brain. This is why I'm... It's not Pantanol. Jeez, it grows more like a rhizome or runner plant, and my brain just does not want to remember it. It needs a lot of iron, or it will just die on you. Anyway, Stargine Bihar, really cool, because the underside of the leaves get this kind of like purplish color to them. It's a super deep like red, but it looks very purple to the eye, and kind of like the coloration you'll see in Limnophilia aromatica, for those who are familiar with that plant, where the underside of a leaf, when it's sitting there kind of waving around, The underside has a nice kind of purplish tone to it. Depending on how you keep it, sometimes it's bright red, sometimes it's kind of purple. But a lot of people didn't know that, like, hey, this is going to get like super tall like a stem. It's not like Stargine Repens or even the Porto Viejo, where it stays much shorter and is like a foreground plant. This is totally a background plant, and if you give it CO2, it goes crazy on you. I've had it before. It's really good. No, it's not the Helpheri. Man, my brain is so out. Like, I know that I saw Joel in chat. I know Joel's grown this plant, but my brain just does not want to remember it. You see it all. So it has a leaf shape that kind of goes like this. It wraps in, and it's very rounded. The Bihar looks a lot like that. And I just can't remember the stupid Ludwigia that looks like that right now, which is driving me insane because I've kept it multiple times. I have propagated it a ton. At one point, my angelfish tank, the 40-gallon breeder, like 2/3 of it was full of this one plant. And I can't. This is a problem when you grow so many plants. Eventually, you forget things off the top of your head until you see them, and then you know exactly what they are. And it probably doesn't help that, like, I've done basically nothing but interviews and interview prep work for the last like 2 weeks. My brain is so like fried on that side of life. But yeah, what do you do? This is part of life. I'll remember it. Somebody will mention it in chat at some point, I'm sure, and be like, oh, he's thinking about this thing. That brain dead guy. Oh, man. I don't know why I can't remember it. I would have to go... Okay, you know what? I know the way I can kind of cheat to do this. I'll go look at my app. That's so bad. This is going to drive me crazy if I don't look it up, so now I have to do this the hard way. Is it not considered a Ludwigia? Oh, brain. I mean, I know it's not a Rotala. What family does that sit under? Is it a Hygro? There it is. Man, I'm just dumb. It's Hygrophila, not Ludwigia. That's how you know Bentley's real dumb. Hygrophila, Pinatafida. I had to go look at everything I've grown through my app on my horticulture awards program through my club to remember it. So Pinatafida. It has a very similar leaf shape to Pinatafida, but it's much larger. And yeah, it's crazy. Hi, Joel. Good to see you, buddy. Hope you're doing well. Anyway, so that would be my biggest thing is that, like, use a sound system. Because there were several items that came up and I'm like, what is this? What did I miss? Oh, well. Well, I do that at my club auctions too, but that's because our club auctions are crazy, right? So their auction lasted until about 3 o'clock, only like 3 hours. Because there's just, the club's a lot smaller. And I had a conversation with several of the club board members and their officers throughout the time I was there, and other people that were there too, of course. Because basically it's kind of a, like, how do we do things with some of the various, like, Pacific Northwest clubs together and schedule things together that are mutually beneficial for all of these clubs? Because if you think about it, like, Seattle and Portland aren't that far apart. And if you do events, there are people who would totally travel from those areas and potentially even like California. So it's a matter of, like, how do we figure out things or set stuff up so that it's mutually beneficial to the clubs and can draw extra people, because Portland, for example, is a really awesome club, and the way that they do things as far as, like, their horticulture awards program, their breeder awards program, they're really great. but they're a smaller club, and it's about how do we get word out, unlike, say, GSAS is kind of lucky in that they've had folks like Corey, and I certainly don't think I've brought too many members. I think, like, seriously, two. But, like, you've had folks like Corey and Bob Steenfott who have talked about GSAS several times. Joel for a while was pretty active in GSAS and would go here and there if it fit his time, and he would talk about it on his live stream. So folks that had good sized channels that are up here in the Pacific Northwest. Of course, Alex over at Secret History Living Inside Your Aquarium talks about GSAS regularly. So there's a lot more creators that happen to be local to Seattle in some way, shape, or form, and go to some of the big events at a very minimum. And some of us go to, most of the club meetings we can attend. But it's not quite that much for Portland, and maybe it's just like I need to give Portland more love because I do really like the folks down there. And if you're closer that way, if you're closer to Portland, it's way better than trying to go to GSAS events, especially our meetings that are on a Tuesday night. I have vowed that I'm actually going to go at least attempt to minorly go to war with my board to try and see if we can fix that problem. Because there's been a number of people who've talked to me, have been like, man, if your meetings were Tuesday nights, I'd go to them. Like when I'm at like Saturday events, like our auctions and stuff. So there's part of me that wants to be like, also, I don't want to go to downtown Seattle on a Tuesday night, deal with the traffic getting there, and then deal with it getting back. This is not fun. Rye Guy Outdoors. I won some samurai soil from the raffle at a local auction. I'm not really sure if I should sand cap it or not for a pea puffer tank. Any recommendations? I think pea puffers can do fine without it. I know that Corvus Oskin has a little more experience with pea puffers than I do, just because they're so small that that they can get in those little gaps. If you prefer the sand look, like, absolutely sand cap it. And what I would do is do what I'm getting off track because my cousin just did a super chat. What's that, cuz? Jeez. But do what MD Fish Tanks does. Put them in like larger media bags, so that if you ever do need to move something or disassemble a tank, it's easy to just pull all the soil out in one go, or at least the soil out in a couple of bags rather than like slowly scooping it out. And it's a lot easier to kind of get the sand off of it doing that way. Check out MD Fish Tank's channel. He does it all the time in almost every tank. So if you want to do a sand cap, go for it. Especially if you're trying to do, if you want them to pick more things off of the surface, sand might be a little safer. And it depends on the other fish you're trying to keep in the tank. So that would be what I would look at, Fry Guy. And also just samurai soul's nice stuff. Glad you picked some up in a raffle. That's pretty sweet. Henry, right? He's another one of those crazies who put his actual name out there in public like I do. A little love to the fish and a shot of bourbon for Bentley. Thanks, cuz. I actually picked something up for my cousin, and he doesn't know this until now, while I was down in Portland. So, cousin, probably not this weekend, but soon, maybe even like later this week, just because, I'm not doing anything. I will have to come visit you and bring you a present. You're gonna like it, trust me. Gonna like it. Gonna like it. I got it in the Oregon. Oh, man. I will say this. Other than, like, Washington has, like, out of nowhere kind of heated up, I love drives that are, like, 3-ish hours. Yeah, I definitely have to do another Cousin Henry video. We've got some planned. It's just every time we get together, we babble for too long, or I just forget my camera gear because I'm like, I'm gonna go see my cousin, and YouTube mode just turns off Because it's like, I'm going to go hang out with my cousin and be an idiot. But we definitely have some stuff that we've talked about doing, and we'll get them done. We'll get them done soon. I might have to go. Dr. Maz, what did you get me? I'll have it for you at Fishtoberfest if I can make it. Oh man. Ooh, see, look at this. This is actually a cool idea. So from Paul Saltero, from me complaining about the Greater Seattle Aquarium Society and their Tuesday night meetings, once every quarter, the Raleigh Aquarium Society does a Saturday afternoon meeting, but the regular meetings are held on Thursday nights. See, I think that would be good, especially if you got your like really marquee speakers. You know, if you're getting Gary Lang to come into town, or you're bringing in like Hans George Evers is our next speaker, which is fantastic, right? Those like big speakers are like, let's say Dr. Mazeral's coming into town. He's going to talk about the Amazon Research Center. Maybe that's how he's giving away that Peru trip next time. Which I hope whoever won just has an absolute blast. I'm sure they will. Like, let's be fair. But I think that would be a good idea. Like, bring your really big speaker that you really want to, you're going to draw a big crowd for on the weekend. Because then you can draw an even bigger crowd. And potentially, then if you're holding other events, whether it's a small swap or an auction, you can just generate more interest in the club. That's smart. That's really smart. That might be my first way to try and fight my club. Because that's Tuesday night nonsense. Like when I was working, like, I don't know, when I first joined the club and I was working in certain places that kept me really close, it was a lot easier to do those things. But man, nowadays I kind of just want to, like, at night be home with my wife and my dogs. I don't maybe it's because, like, I have a habit of always staying to the very end of the auction, because for a while I was the auction chair, and I'd be there till like midnight regularly, which means I would get home and if I brought stuff, I would need to acclimate it, and so I'm not getting to bed till like 1 a.m, sometimes as late as 2, and then I would get up at 5 a.m. or 5:30 on those nights where, like, when it was club night, I would be like, or I push this one to 5:30. But I definitely still need a shower in the morning, because otherwise I will feel miserable all day at work. And just, it's so tough. Like, we have other folks, and, you know, for some of you who travel to some of your clubs, for those who kind of have a local club, but it takes you a bit of travel to go to some of their events, you know what I'm talking about, right? When you have big travel and all of a sudden, like, you either have to take a day off of work, or you're just, like, not sleeping, that's no good, right? It's just bad. Apparently, can I be your guest at your next meeting? I mean, you kind of have to, like, it does mean I'm getting old. Yeah, I'm definitely getting old. That's for certain. I like a little bit of sleep. Although I'm weird. I typically only function on like 6 hours of sleep. I very regularly cannot sleep more than that. I've been trying to sleep more while I am in the job hunt because of my layoff. And my body's just like, nope, get up. If you're at 5 to 6 hours, we're good. Get up. But only 3? Ooh, that's murder. I need that little extra touch, and then I'm like, yeah, I'm good to go. And otherwise, it's like, no, I'm totally a product of my father's training when I was young, and that I'm a morning person, and my body clock is like, it doesn't matter what time I went to sleep. If it's 6 a.m., I am awake. Now, I can usually go back to sleep if I've really not had very much sleep, but I will wake up almost without fail between 5:55 and 6 a.m. every day, all year. It's so weird. That's something my dad basically, like, beat into me. I say this in the sense that my dad, when I was young, true story, my dad, which my dad never hit me, just for reference. My dad was fantastic. But the way that he would wake me up for school is he would just open my door a little bit, flick on my lights, and walk away. And at first, he kind of like would wake me up, but then eventually it was like if I didn't get up on my own when the lights came on, that was on my butt. So it'd be something like I could miss breakfast or miss, not have time to take my morning shower, which is something I've done my whole life. I've always been a shower in the morning person. It helps me wake up. If I miss those things, it didn't matter. I was just getting yanked and driven to school. or potentially other things, because like we used to do, I think I've told this many times, I used to do sports card shows and sports card collecting on the weekends. And for the longest time, my dad and I would sell at sports card shows. So on weekends, I would be getting up at like 4 a.m. to drive out to some of these malls and stuff super early. Because sometimes we'd be going to like Portland or Bellingham or these places that are a couple hours away, and just got to get up nice and early, get yourself going. Okay, you got to be out the door by this time because the show starts at 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. and we need to like get there set up and all that stuff, right? So I was just, as a kid, very regimented to like wake up early in the morning and get going and do stuff. I'm a little slower nowadays, but I get up earlier in the sense of if I need to do something at 9 a.m., like start work, or my first meeting is at 9 a.m., is what it typically was previously, I'm still up at 6 a.m. because that gives me time to like spend a little time with the wife in the morning, have a little breakfast, get my shower, spend some time with the dogs, all those kind of things, right? And then if I was driving in, drive, which, I'm not looking forward to Seattle traffic again, let me tell you that. It's the worst. Anyway, we can actually do real fish questions now, instead of me just babbling about random stuff. So if you have questions, at Bentley Pasco, Geek Boy 4 a.m. crazy sickos. Anyway, at Bentley Pasco makes it super easy for me to see them. Bring whatever you got. I'll tell you whatever you got. You want to know about fish? Want to know about non-fish? You do you. Freaking orchid dude. I'm the same way. I wake up at 5:30 every morning and usually just fall back asleep. I don't. I'll sometimes like wake up at 6 a.m. and if I'm just if for whatever reason I'm not like really pressed for time on something, I might sit there for like 15 minutes and just kind of like let my brain wake up. And sometimes what I do is I'll grab my cell phone and I'll read a couple news articles really fast, because that typically engages my brain and wakes it up. And then it's like, grab a towel, go get a shower, come in, do all the morning stuff, get dressed, let the dog out, take the dog for the walk, do all those things. Caitlin wakes up 15 minutes before she has to go. She's not a morning person. Hey, as long as you figure out your things, you do you. I'm like, I treasure some of my morning time, which is maybe why I wake up so early. Oh no. This is a dangerous question. African orchid dude. What's your favorite fish, and would you drink it in a smoothie? I can answer that second part right away. No. No, I would not. My favorite fish is rainbow fish. I'm sure you want more narrow down, right? I would have to say that to this day, still probably my favorite fish is the Boesemani rainbow, because that's what really got me hooked on rainbow fish in general and really got me deeper into the hobby. My favorite fish that I have in my fish room to more regularly watch is got to be my running river rainbows. They school so tightly compared to any other rainbow I have, and like rainbows are schoolers, but these guys are like rummy nose tetras of rainbow fish, and their color can really only be properly appreciated like in some natural sunlight. So like right now is the best time during summer and spring when I get more sunlight and you can get those nice like long days, lots of sunlight. They look incredible. So yeah, those would be my favorite. No, I'm definitely not having them in a smoothie. Kingfisher's Catch. Good to see you, buddy. What habits did you have to build on to keep your hobby on track and helped you indefinitely? So, I am a really regimented person. I basically almost always do water changes the same day. And when I'm working a ton, usually that schedule is somewhere like I do this room of tanks Thursday night. I do this room of tanks Wednesday night. I do these tanks Saturday morning, right? That was very frequently my schedule to try to break it up and not have it all in one shot. What I'm bad about and what I'll let slide a little is filter maintenance. And so part of what I have done is I use more like intake sponges and things like that on the filters that handle them well in order to make some of that maintenance a little faster and easier. So like things like the Awaze, while I complain that I lose flow really fast because I need to clean them, as long as I'm up on cleaning those pre-filters, because it's really fast work, it's effective. Now, all this will be so much simpler if I had like a proper fish room with a proper sink to use instead of like a bathroom sink and like buckets. But yeah, that's basically my thing. Is like I've basically augmented how I keep some of my tanks because of the my slackery behavior when it comes to servicing filters. I'm really good on doing water work. Like I pay a lot of attention to it. If I notice that like a filter is starting to like make some noise or kick some extra air, I'm topping up water like that night, right? That's where I'm really good. I do water changes pretty regularly. But filters, I need to get better at that. Let's just be honest. I need to get much better at that. But you know, we can do things. Greg Jones, Bentley, there is a Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen Bulls basketball cards in my parents' attic somewhere, worth anything. Potentially worth a lot of many things. The Michael Jordan rookie nowadays, the Fleer, assuming you have it in really great condition, is worth a ludicrous amount of money. Yeah. I mean, it's Michael Jordan. What do you do? Pippen, not as much, but I'm sure if you had the right Pippen card, it's still worth good money. I was more of a baseball guy, but I do know like select cards in other sports. It's mostly like specific rookie cards are going to always, you know, if you're big name players, if you have the right rookie card for them, it's always going to be worth money. I was a big sports card person and Magic. I used to sell a lot of Magic cards when I was a kid. I was a very industrious, like 11 and 12-year-old. I sold a good number of cards as a kid, and there was nobody pulling the wool over my eyes. I was very, very knowledgeable about pricing and a very shrewd negotiator. Is the Johnny from Dancefish, is the Michael Jordan baseball rookie card worth anything? Absolutely. There's a couple different ones. There's some that are like way rarer. But yeah, no, if they're in really good condition, they're still worth money. They're because there's just not. He only played for a very short period of time, and realistically, he didn't play at a pro level long enough to like have lots of different cards be created. So there's kind of only 1 year that has a couple of cards that were made for him. And if you happen to get the right one, which there's one that's called like Electric Diamond. It's an Upper Deck. So it's the standard Upper Deck rookie, but it has this special font on it that says Electric Diamond. It was what we would call an insert nowadays. They're worth a ton just because there's so few of them. They only made like, I think it's 500 of them total, something like that. But yeah, if you got that stuff, a bunch of it is potentially worth a good amount of money, or just keep hanging on to it. You know, we'll do actual fish questions. Leo 209. You just saw an Arowana in Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah, I've heard a lot about that game, but I haven't finished. Let's be honest, I've barely started Breath of the Wild because I just don't play a lot of. Even though my Switch is sitting over here, I have a Switch Lite for those who care. I have the more portable version. Whatever. But I really haven't had a lot of time to play. I've been focusing on some time with the wife, but then mostly like setting up into the new job. And I don't know, My attention is so split between other things nowadays that it's hard for me to get like good time in some of the longer video games that are out there. So like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is an example. They look amazing though. I will say that. Elfish tanks got a small colony of L333333333333333s about a year ago. I do that with that particular fish. Sorry, I can't help myself because I'm an idiot. They have more than doubled in size. Is there a time frame to expect breeding? Once they hit, I think it's something like 3.5 inches or so, you're starting to get close. If I remember correctly, because Master Breeder Dean used to breed them quite a lot, they had to get somewhere around like 2.5 to 3 years old to be sexually mature. But what I would just say is don't stress about expecting them to breed. Just keep your water conditions nice, keep feeding them, keep them, as our friend Dan at Dan's Fish likes to say, fat and sassy, right? Give them some caves, give them some cover, maybe a ditherfish, and just let them do their thing. And then when they start surprising you, now oh, they're ready, right? And then that's when you get to start having some real fun and like trying to raise up babies and all that kind of stuff. But don't try and push it. I have found in my hobby, whenever I try to force things to occur, is when all my mistakes happen. And if I just let stuff happen naturally and chill about it and just do my best to keep a good environment, then stuff just goes well. Caitlin DeRozier, rainbow fish hybridizing. What genuses can I keep together without having to worry about it? So, in theory, almost any of them can hybridize. I know, not helpful. It's less likely to happen between, like, if the genus is different. So, Chalatherina, Melanitania, Glossolepis, right? It's less likely to happen, but it still can happen. I have watched my Blaheri male chase a Melanitania Frederici female and try to court her constantly. He's an idiot. They don't discriminate. They love everybody. But you're less likely to have it. Where I haven't really seen any hybrids at all is two Glossolepis. So like the Incisus or the Pseudo Incisus of the Millennium Red Rainbow and the Red Rainbow, the Emerald Rainbow, the Wanamensis, the Multisquamata, the Red Dragon Rainbow, like all those ones that are all in the Glossolepis family, I really haven't seen them crossbreed. But then again, there's only so many of them, and usually most of us rainbow keepers keep them like very separated because they're a less common species in all the Glossolepis. Like all the Glossolepis species are a little less common. They're getting better nowadays because folks like Dan are bringing them in more regularly, but they are, they are a little more rare in the sense of compared to say like all the Melanitania species that are out there. There's like a million of them. But yeah, I mean, cross genus, a little less likely to happen. They will often stay together, but if you're trying to actively breed them, separate them into a tank just to play it safe. Take a couple males and like 3 to 4 females and put them in a little colony in their own tank and breed them for a while, or even just a male and 2 females, and then you can bring them back to the display tank and let the babies raise up in that tank, right? That's how I'd approach it if I was trying to actively breed a specific species. But you can keep them all together, and very unlikely for like Fry to raise up inside the big tank with a bunch of rainbows in it. They're too dumb to realize they need to protect their own children. They're not that bright, but man, are they pretty. Paul Saltero, I've taken the plunge into Livebearers, the red tail split fin, Xenotoka dodroi, and Amica splendens. Ooh, so you're getting into you're going like Mike the Fish Tank Barn levels of more some of the Gudaids and some of the cooler, less frequently found in a fish store Livebearers, which I appreciate. Like, I think those are the really cool ones to keep. I'm a big fan of the Trout Gudaid, which isn't that Amica splendens, right? Maybe I'm wrong. No, that's Iliad and Furcidens. Which one's Amica splendens? Now I gotta remind myself. Amica splendens. Oh, the butterfly split fin. Yeah, that's a good looking fish. Still a good looking fish, but yeah. I like it. I respect it. I think what sets a lot of people away from those particular live bearers, kind of like some people that don't get into rainbows, is because they have a funky body shape. Especially you see like older rainbows and the boys have those like giant humpbacks to them and just look kind of ridiculous. Some people just aren't into those weird body shapes, right? And they look at like a Tetra or something and they're like, that seems normal. And then they look at something like a lot of the live bearers that are out there, or like some of the Sunamagills and stuff that have these like kind of weird body shapes to them, and they're just like, that just looks funky. But I don't know, they're cool fish. Cool, cool, cool. I like it, Paul. Kingfisher's catch. LRB managed to get some maculosis into Marcel's hands. I am not a very devout person, but I will pray to something tonight for that one. I will pray to something because Marcel will make that happen. That's good because honestly, I was really terrified with only one person really in the United States basically having maculosis that we might just lose them. And not because I think Lucas can't keep them well, but more just like they're kind of notorious for being tough to get them to actively breed a lot. They're more seasonal from my understanding, and they won't just like breed on command like a lot of your Bozeman and stuff where they're just like every day they'll spit you out eggs as long as you're keeping them happy, where like the maculoses aren't necessarily like that. I'm sure that Marcelo will get it hammered down in like 2 months and have like millions of them start happening to come out, and the rest of us rainbow nerds will be very happy. As long as he doesn't intensify the. Okay, I love Marcel. I want to be very clear, but one thing Marcel is kind of notorious for doing is picking and forcing higher amounts of red and orange in fish. I just hope that he does not do that with Maculos. I like the fact that they're yellow with the black spots. That color is really appeasing. It's very unique. I hope he doesn't start color selecting for some crazy nonsense. Or if he does, he at least keeps them separate and has his own crazy line and then normal Maculosis. I love Marcel, but sometimes it's like, all of your fish are just orange, man. What are you doing to me? Oh, man. Nabokov fan, did you open the box yet? Oh, I've not all the way yet. Sorry, I've been busy. I need to though. That might happen like this weekend. I have some work in the fish room I got to get done Sunday. M&C Aquatics, have you ever grown cryptocorine petchai? So I have a bunch of petchai. I think it's petchai pink growing actually in the front of the guppy mansion. So yes, I have grown it. Only one. There's a couple different petchais. Technically, there's some color forms from farms and stuff, but yes, I have grown petchai. It's a nice plant. I don't think it's a little more finicky than Wendetii, but once you get it happy, it's like any crypt that's happy. It'll go crazy on you. Shank is Raphael and Donnie moving into. Uh-oh. Whoa. Whoa, big chat jump. That's how you know I'm way behind, because I babble too much. As we well know. Jeff Koski. One of my female snowball neocaridina shrimp. How did I not pronounce that? That was holding eggs now released a bunch of little shrimplets. So cool to watch. Oh, did you actually watch them get released? I've never seen that happen. I've never like physically watched it occur. That sounds really awesome though. Chris, the Madaquaris Bigs, will quote this Canadian legend. I'd press my junk on a bus window if it wasn't illegal. Good to see you, Bigsy. Oh, man. Sandy Cheeks. I was wondering if it's a good idea to have a plant pot with dirt capped and planted to grow plants. So my only concern is that you would kind of have to do like 2 caps, right? Because realistically, you want you're going to want a planter that has openings at the bottom like you do to let water out, but this is so that water goes through everything cleanly. And then in that case, you don't want dirt directly down in there. So, yes. Whenever I've seen planters done successfully, it's usually with some kind of smaller aqua soil. And whenever I've done a couple of different types of planters, not necessarily like a standard plant pot, but other types of planters like little suction cup ones and stuff like that, I've always used aqua soil. I haven't tried dirt. There's no reason it shouldn't work though. I would just make sure you have a good sand layer below, dirt layer, good sand layer on top. But it certainly should work. Biggs, you're just trouble, aren't you? You're just trouble. A fish family. So great to have a stream and a place for fish fan community to come together. We're a dysfunctional family, though, aren't we? Leotonine. How can a fish that's so pretty be so dumb? Oh, it's because they're rainbows. They focus all that energy on being pretty, and that's about it. They're not the smartest, but man. Uh-oh, hold on. Fair and lost fish? What's going on? Oh, let me make sure I didn't miss the start of this. Recently lost 75% of the fish in my Fluval Flex 32. Oh no. Temp was 82.8, so a little toasty. And BBA in the tank. Took sponge filter out, cleared the filter. Back spine, bioballs, and carbon. Okay, so we're just doing filter maintenance. Okay. This seems okay. So clean the tank, going to rescape with... Oh, okay, so you cleaned it after losing everything, which makes sense. Going to reshape with an Awaze 350 Biomaster Thermo and a plants. Is your concern that the temperature got too high? I guess it would be like what fish were in there. I mean, it sucks losing that many fish. 30 to 35 fish. Oof. Those Flex 32s, I really like them conceptually, but they're a little spendy. But if you get them in like, I've seen people win them in our club auctions and stuff for like dirt cheap. And that's where I would be interested in them. Kingfisher's Catch, my summer tub should encourage them to spawn more. Nice. Yeah, Kalen. Maybe you just acquire some of the culls. I mean, it takes him a while to start doing that. He has to start seeing weird colorations that he likes, then he starts color selecting for them, but yeah. Morgan Bright, getting my 75-gallon ready for Sahydria denisoni. Any tips for pink flamingo crypts? Bright light. Do not let them get shaded at all. They really like high levels of light. They appreciate CO2, but don't necessarily have to have CO2. But when I've seen them most successful, a little bit of CO2 and very strong light that is not shaded. So anytime you've got like big stems or something growing over them, trim them back immediately. Because those pink flamingos get really finicky if they're not getting the amount of light they want. And they really want some strong light. Some of the best flamingo I've ever seen were at my friend Joel's house, Corvus Oskin. Right? He had some amazing flamingo before he moved. And they were up front and made sure nothing could shade them out. All the big tall stuff was in back. Lots of strong light right on top of them. And they looked very nice. Very nice. And I've never been super successful with them. I can get them going for a while, and then they're just like, no. And it drives me crazy. Because it's a really cool plant. Nowadays, I just keep the Jacobsoni pink because it's way more durable, and it has a little more color variation to it. So it's got some, like, if you're in CO2, it's got some good deep reds, a bright pink stripe, that kind of stuff. Not in CO2, kind of a pale pinkish color with a bright neon pink stripe in the middle. Very nice plant. Talking about Jeffrey Christensen over in Indonesia with the help of Hans George Evers. Most of these new rainbow species in Canada. Oh, goes Spencer Jack starting to get all those? Cool. That's a good one for those Canadian folks. I would just be very careful because they have run into some issues uh, because of how they keep the tanks basically unlidded and close to each other. They've had some jumps and some hybridization occur in certain species, so just be aware. And he's said that to the people that pay attention, but it's just be prepared for some of those. Some of them have had some issues, but overall, very good source to get rainbow fish, and a lot of stuff that's just really hard to get in the United States and Canada in general. Connor Costello, what is your experience with growing out plants outside and the best fertilizer? My experience is this goose egg. I'm how to put this. I'm not a summer tubbing person. That requires too much work for me. I typically just keep all my tanks in the house because I appreciate all those things. I like keeping my nature in my home and things like that. And I'm just not set up in my current area because like I get a lot of raccoons in my yard, and I'm not set up to like prevent them from basically turning whatever pond I put outside into a giant meal. So I just haven't tried them. In general, what I would say is you're going to get some super strong light. So what you might need is shade cloth, because a lot of our aquarium plants, if you're not using pure pond plants, might not necessarily want that much light. Because you're talking about, we might think a fluval is really powerful or this light is really powerful. None of that has anything on direct sunlight. Direct sunlight is very strong, crazy strong. If we think that like 150 par is really strong light, 12 inches down or something like that, the sun's going to give you like 600 on a cloudy day. I mean, it's a wild difference in the intensity and power of the light. But I mean, most of our plants are grown in the wild. They can handle sunlight. It's just you might need to shade it. So just be prepared for those things. Robert Johnson, does green water change the way you feed Bozemanite rainbow fry at all? Well, yes. If you have green water, you almost don't need to feed them because they have a continuous food source. Now, what I will say is once you start getting them to certain sizes, it is still really good to give them some nice high protein foods. So something like baby brine shrimp or something like that. But you don't necessarily have to feed them like 3 to 4 times a day when you have green water. They have something they can constantly nibble on. So you really could do like one good burst of like live baby brine once a day, right? If you're doing that, or maybe it's a little bit of flake. Maybe it's a cube of frozen, whatever it may be. But they've got a kind of consistent food source there. It's just when they start hitting like a month old or larger, you want to start giving them a little bit stronger protein hit than what green water is going to give them. And that's where I'd start looking at, especially if you can do it live baby brine. And then they'll grow like crazy. Green water is amazing for rainbow fish. Rainbow fish babies do so well in green water. And it's like one of the first things I'll do if I get to a point where I can get my garage done and start trying to breed rainbows again. I'm going to have a dedicated tank that just makes me green water constantly. And I'm going to be just dunking it in to my baby tanks. That's literally going to probably be like a 100-gallon pond or something. It just has 24/7 light nonstop. We are getting close to the time, just as a heads up. Isabel C. Hi, Bentley. What are your thoughts on bladder snails? Do you let them be in your tanks? Yep. Basically, all snails are fine. I am not... There's a lot of people who don't like snails. I have no issues with them. There are certain fish that will turn them into snacks, like cichlids, as Paul Saltero was mentioning. But a lot of times, what I find is that if I'm having some problems with plants, the bladder snails and a lot of snails make it more apparent, because instead of like little pinholes, all of a sudden I'll see larger holes in my plants, because they're eating the rest of the decayed plant matter around that. And that helps it just make it super easy to go like, oh, I need to pay attention. I need to fix some things, right? And they do cleanup crew. Like, they're breaking down larger bits of waste. So maybe you got plecos or something that poo all over the place. They're going to break that down to something smaller and smaller that can go well into substrate and just become extra plant food in the grand scheme of things. It's extra fertilizer. So I never look at them as a negative. If I see them like way out of control, then I know I'm feeding my tank way too much. But, you know, a little bit here and there, or just a small colony of snails living, doing their thing, doesn't bug me at all. They're a way for me to basically gauge a number of things. There's two things to me that are ways to basically be your like canary in the coal mine. A trick I learned from my good friend Joel: duckweed in a sump. Because duckweed is such a voracious grower that if something is going wrong, the duckweed will show problems before any other plant in your aquarium. And if you contain it down in a sump, in a chamber, you don't have to worry about it taking over your tank. So you can use something like that, or you could use like dwarf water lettuce, very similarly, like really aggressive floater plants, to be your kind of like, is something going wrong with my plant nutrition in my aquarium? 2, snails. Snails tell me about a lot of things. And the biggest thing they tell me is if I know if I'm feeding my tanks way too heavily, if all of a sudden my snails go from like, oh, it's a nice little population, there's one, and there's one, to like, there are 50 of these things on the glass. What the then I know I'm feeding way too much food. I need to dial it back, right? So that's just how things are. Like, I see snails as a positive because they're a way for me to gauge certain aspects of how my tank is. And this is just things that you learn over time. If you don't mind snails, they are a fantastic way to learn a lot about your aquarium. Robert Johnson, my green water is doing well. However, my nitrates are at least 40 ppm. If I lower my nitrates, would I lose my green water? Potentially. I wouldn't stress too much. Like, up to 40 ppm is really not dangerous. Like, I keep it lower just because that's a personal thing, but up to 40 ppm, not that dangerous. The only thing you might want to do is make sure you have good oxygenation. But other than that, it's like when you start crusting over that is where you might start worrying. So that would be my thought. I mean, you certainly can try to lower it some and just monitor. And if you start seeing issues with your green water at that point, then just bring it back up, right? Tony Adams, I wanted to know your opinion on sand cap in a planted tank when you get a second. I get this a lot. So I personally prefer darker substrates. So from an aesthetic thing, for me, I don't like sand. I am not a fan of sand aesthetically, personally. Now, if you look at something like what MD Fish Tanks does, or the Wallstead method, the typical dirty tank method, where you're using a sand cap over some other like nutrient-rich soil of some form, it can work fine. For people who want like sand as a decoration, it's a perfectly fine route to go. It's just not my personal taste. I'm not really big on sand. Now, if I was trying to keep like Geophagus or some other earth eater that really wants like a fine substrate of sand, that would change things. But it's just not, yeah, it's sand, it's coarse, it's gritty, and it gets everywhere. Can't stand it. It's just my thing. Also, like, I keep rainbow fish. If you keep rainbow fish on sand, their color gets like way washed out. Dark substrate is my jam, and like almost with the exception of 2 tanks in my house, I have rainbow fish in every tank. So I'm inherently going to keep dark substrate everywhere, right? So that's where I just play it easy and I use aquasoils personally. That's my jam. Is it the right answer for everyone? No. Not at all. There's lots of people that have tons of success in sand. It's all about what you want to do in your tank and making sure that you make the right adjustments for that. That's it. Easy peasy. There's no singular answer to every aquarium. There's like 1,000 answers. So yeah. Morgan Bright, for those pink flamingo crypts, I have the Co-op Light Flue Ball Stratum, no CO2. Yeah, so just make sure that none of the plants can shade those crypts. And you should have a strong enough light. So if you're keeping them like center front of your tank, just make sure that like your stems or all your bigger plants are pushed back. And so there's a good gap to make sure you've just got consistent, strong light. And you probably need to have that light turned up a bit. Not necessarily max, depends on the size of the tank, but yeah, that's what I look at. Okay, gang. We are past the 7 o'clock time, so I am going to do one last question, but then I need to go because it's dinner time in this house. So yeah, whatever. I'm going to attempt to add some additional aqua soil, Amazonia, to a well-established tank, 6 years, heavily planted. I'm pre-soaking the aqua soil, as I know it will leach ammonia. Any other tips? So I would really stress rinse it very, very thoroughly. And then after you've rinsed it, if you want to play it super paranoid, don't add it all at once. Add like a quarter of it, wait 2 days, add another quarter of it, wait 2 days, add another quarter of it, wait 2 days, add the last bit. Just allow that little bump, because there will be some bump in ammonia that happens even after rinsing, to like more steadily affect the aquarium, and the rest of the tank and your biological bacteria should be able to kick up and handle that. So yeah, that would be my small advice there. But yeah, just rinse it really well. That'll help minimize that problem. Nelson, the Treat Trails game is annoyingly addictive. It can be, man. If you're really into like Bejeweled and games like that, it can be fun to play. Anyway, everybody showed up. Thank you so much. Pete Berlinski, good to see you, buddy. Tail end, what did I miss? I went to Portland. They had an auction. I didn't buy anything, except for a present for my cousin, but it's not fish related. It took me 4 hours to get there. It took me 6 hours to get home. It was a long day. But it was fun because I got to see some friends and babble about fish and other dumb things. Anyway, I hope to have some other fantastic news later this week or next week. Look forward to this week's video Saturday. I hope that you will enjoy it. I'm going to see. It depends on filming schedule as to which of the two things I'm planning on doing. And then I'm going to go see my cousin Henry sometime soon. We might do a video with cousin Henry again. Maybe some more Pekka horror stories or some other fun thing like that. Anyway, I hope that you all have a fantastic rest of your evening. I'm going to go have dinner. And as always, thank you so much for watching. And stay awesome.